Oh, that little ding means we are going to get started. Barb, how excited are you today to be able to be with all these people from across the country?
Hey, Jill, I'm super excited, especially seeing everyone coming all the way from California to Ohio and Illinois. It- Thanks for everyone for joining us. It's going to be a great conversation.
Absolutely. And I do have to say, our dedicated California people, that's pretty early in the morning for you. So thank you for joining this conversation. I am from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I see a lot of North Carolina people. So excited to see that as well. So you are already doing this, but in the chat, we want to just tell us who you are, name, role, district, and where you are from. And love seeing that we're seeing people from, again, all over the country in all different roles, from teacher to instructional coaches to superintendents in here as well. So thank you all from joining. Ooh, another Jill. Woo, I always got to celebrate that. There's not a lot of Jills out there.
That's true. I think I saw someone say Lithuania. Is that right?
Woo. I've got to go back scrolling. This chat
I
is
know.
going a little fast. So
I
maybe.
know people are dropping stuff in. So great to see everyone.
And I'm seeing a lot of familiar names. So thank you for joining us. Previously from other webinars, also school districts we already work with. We're so excited that you are here today. So let us tell a little bit more about ourselves. My name is Jill Thompson. You can find me on Twitter at edu_Thompson. And I am from Charlotte, North Carolina, as I see a lot of people here are also from North Carolina. I've worn all of the hats in education, started off as a teacher and then moved into instructional coaching role before moving into administration and then central office, along with then being, before coming to Education Elements, I was the director of personalized digital learning in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. And so we worked a lot with instructional coaches when we were implementing personalized learning. Barb, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Well, my name is Barb White, and I can be reached at _Barb White. And I'm actually coming to you from the Chicagoland area. So I'm in Northern Illinois, and this is where I have been for quite some time. I've spent most of my career in public schools as a secondary teacher, as an instructional coach, working on different district initiatives that have to do with coaching, with PLCs, with other things that support student learning. And I'm really excited to be part of this today, as I know this is one of the things that we really love about working with Education Elements, is just supporting people in their learning and talking about it and finding ways, especially now when things are changing so quickly in education. So we're really glad to be here, and I'm glad to be able to have the conversation today. So thanks, Jill.
Awesome. Well, you brought us perfectly into our next people. Well, who is Education Element? So we believe schools grow when people grow. And so we really value those relationships with people, because we know when people grow, we can then have those habits trickle over to growing schools. And so we really do love bringing people together, like all of you. And I'm seeing people now from Ghana to Ukraine to all over the world, which is really exciting to really talk about what we do together. And that's what's important, is bringing people together, learning and growing together. And so really excited for you all to be here.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Jill. Well, we have a couple of objectives today. We're going to do 3 different things. We're going to take some time to explore, to equip, and actually to envision. So we're going to look at 3 different ways that coaches can support relationship-driven structures. You're going to leave today with a plan to be able to respond to some of the different things that are happening with your teachers. And we're also going to talk a little bit more about just equipping you as well and thinking about what that might look like. And so we're hoping that you leave here today with something concrete and ready to go and ready to work with. And that's where we're headed. So do some of that. Before we get started, though, we want to do a little bit of a check-in. One of the things we love to do here at Education Elements is make sure we frame what we're going to be heading into for the next hour or so. So it helps us frame where we're going, and it also lets us hear from all the voices that are here. And so if you would take a look at our lovely people up here. So if you're, like you said, this has to do with Ted Lasso. How are you feeling today? What do you hope to do more of in 2022? Do you feel like you want to be like Sam, doing the right thing even when it's the hard timing? Are you feeling a little bit more like Ted, remaining optimistic in the face of adversity? Maybe you're Dr. Sharon, seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. Or perhaps 2022, you want to be a little bit more like Keely, taking risks to grow beyond what others thought you were capable of. So just take a second and let us know in the chat. What do you hope to do more of in 2022? Sam, Ted, Sharon, or Keely?
Ooh, I'm seeing already a lot of mix from Sam to Keely to Ted himself.
Yep.
Oh, and a mixture. It can be Keely and Sam. Absolutely.
Yep.
Love seeing these come through. Barb, what would you say that, what hope do you bring in for 2022?
I know. I think today I'm feeling like Keely. I think I want to take some risks just to grow beyond what I thought I was capable of. I think I'm just feeling excited and energized about some new opportunities. So today I'm gonna channel my inner Keely. How about you, Jill? What are you thinking?
I'm feeling the same. I'm feeling Keely today, especially with this webinar. So, but I do relate to all of them. And I do think I put all those hats on depending on what meeting I'm in and what I'm doing. But I'm definitely feeling a little more Keely today. Yes, all Molly, absolutely. Definitely feeling that. Make sure, those of you that are in the chat, make sure you are on everyone so everyone can see what you are doing. Because if you just do hosts and panelists only, we can see it, which is great, and we'll call you out. But we also want to make sure everyone can see your answer. So make sure you switch in the chat so that you are on everyone versus just the hosts and panelists seeing this. Also seeing some questions coming in. Yes, you will get the recording, and you will also get the slides at the very end of the session, and then you will get a follow-up email too. So you will get those great questions. Keep them coming. We'll try to hit them. We have about 100 people in our session, and it keeps growing up. So we will get to those as well.
Great. Well, let me go ahead and frame a little bit about how we're going to use our time together. We use an acronym called CPAD, and with CPAD, it takes us through some of these different things. So the first thing we're going to do is spark, just get some of our juices flowing and thinking a little bit about how to think about the topic. From there, we're going to expand, and we're going to think a little bit more about what our topic is. Practice and apply, make some sense. We're going to be able to practice some of these things and then build some places to do some application. And then the debrief, we're going to ask for the debrief to come later on, maybe through, you're going to tweet back to us or send us an email, but it's going to give us a chance to see this whole arc that we're going to take a look at as we move through our time together today. So let me kick it back to Jill, who is going to start us off.
So for our Spark, we really wanted you to kind of understand where we started this journey from at Education Elements. And one of the things that we saw as a problem from the pandemic is that the traditional professional development pulls teachers, coaches, and leaders away from students. And it really, it lacks in personalization, and it's usually just a one and done, and not application or job embedded. And there are also times where you're not seeking feedback, so it doesn't stick, and you're not able to apply it. So we started noticing this trend more and more. And then with the pandemic, it became even bigger. And so we really thought about how could we answer this problem that we keep hearing districts have, especially around coaches, where they don't have the time to pull out coaches from their instructional day because they're supporting teachers. They don't have the time. What could that really look like? And so one of the ways that we're addressing this problem is through what we call our 4 pillars of virtual courses. So we have launched our first virtual course with instructional coaching, which you're going to get to learn more about in a few minutes. But all of our virtual courses are around these 4 pillars. We did lots of focus groups with people from across the world to really see what their needs were. And then based off of those needs, that's what we created these pillars from. And we also did surveys too. And we realized joy, just lifting educators out of their day-to-day and helping them see things differently, even asynchronously, that is possible to bring joy to learning. We also knew it needed to be job embedded, and it needed to be small, bite-sized. So those micro learnings are really happening. As we're starting to shift into different generations, we're having different generations have, a little bit less of time. So if we're thinking about like our newest generation, right, the TikTok, it's a 7-second video, right? And so we need to also compete against that bite-sized piece. So how can we create these micro learnings where they're having these actions to improve upon over time? Which then we know habits that really make sure that we're building these blocks and supporting capacity so that we have that growth over time. And oftentimes with instructional coaches, we are really good at what our content is, but sometimes we need support in how can we build relationships? How can we make connections before content? And then also, last but not least, that personalization that we talked about before in that problem. Learning needs to meet educators where they are, and we need to make sure that we're having feedback loops. And so when you do one of our virtual courses, we'll give you what we need to apply in your classroom so it's job embedded. And then you will be able to take that, upload it, and get feedback from us so that you can see where you are in your journey and then also be able to make tweaks as well. And we know the most important thing is that relationship. You need those, right? You can't design these learning experiences without getting an understanding of who are your learners and what their needs are. And so that like encircles all of these core 4 pillars that we have. So then what happened with how did we start with instructional coaches and why are we focusing on instructional coaches today? Well, you can see our past, present, but really we noticed school and districts, and you might be one of those people, using their ESSER funds to buy positions, but then they didn't have the capacity to actually help support them. Or we've seen a lot of teachers being, really great at teachers, and then they're being pulled from the classroom to help support other teachers, which is great, but there was no training for them to make that shift from being, this awesome, amazing teacher to being an instructional coach. And so we really wanted to help support districts that were doing that because we know that instructional coaches is one of the most important jobs in a school. They can make the biggest changes and grow school achievement and outcomes when they have that proper training and tools. And many instructional coaches, again, know that content, but they don't have the systems and processes in place to be able to share that knowledge in an impactful way. And so that's what we're really going to do during this expand time is walk you through these like 6 core things. So you'll be able to walk away today with things that you can do in your job tomorrow. There's very little to no prep in everything that we're going to provide you for. And we are going to encourage you to make some commitments later to think about what's that one thing that you're going to try so that you can improve your journey to also help and support teachers. Barb, did I forget anything or anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I think that covered a lot of the who we are, what we do, why we're doing this. And so hopefully that gives the context that people were looking for. And I did drop in the chat some of the information about those courses. So that's something you can take a look at there as well. And from here, we do want to talk a little bit about just how we expand. We're hoping this will be just an easy lift, but it'll give you a high kind of impact and oversight of kind of where we're headed and what we're going to be taking a look at next. So like we mentioned, we know that schools grow when people grow. And so part of that is doing things with people and not to them. And so in the notes here, Jill has just dropped a note catcher. And this is a place for you to be able to capture anything that resonates with you. Things that are what you need, we want you to be able to write it down, and things you can personalize for yourself, because we want you to feel like this idea that something's being done with you. So we don't want our teachers to feel like coaching is being done to them. We want it to feel like it's being driven by them. So they become the ones who be able to think about what it is they need and to ask for and to frame it in a way that feels helpful and meaningful to them.
It will force you to make a copy so you have your own personal notes for it. And so again, dropped in the chat, I want to just give you a minute so that you can get that link, but it will force you to make a copy. You do want to be signed into Google so that it saves to your Google Drive. And if you don't have Google, you can open it and it will make a copy, and then you'll be able to save it as a PDF, or you can download it too as a Word doc if you are using Word.
Oh, great, thanks, Jill. All right, hopefully you have those open. We're going to go ahead and start talking a little bit about what our different techniques are that we want to discuss. And the first thing we want to talk about today is connections before content. And connections before content, this has to do with this idea of being able to build trust and build opportunity. We know that teachers are built for relationship, and we also know that it's one of the best ways for us to get the things that we need for our students and their learning. So the mindset we have here is build relationships. When we think about TED, what would TED say? TED would say that idea that schools are the people and not the building. And so we want to think a little bit about how we can help teachers take ownership of what they're doing. And when they know us well, they're going to be able to do that better, and think a little bit about that. So let me go ahead and give you the strategy. Our strategy here is relationship bonding. And I'm going to talk briefly about 4 different ways that we can build relationships with the teachers in our building and the teachers in our districts. The first one we have here is something called the We and Me connection cards. And I think Jill's also going to drop that link in the chat as well. But this is a series of cards that have different levels or layers of questions that you could just use when you're meeting with teachers, just to begin to build some of that context in that relationship. They might be something just that has to do with them outside of the workplace, or they might have to do with something that's a little more personalized. And so there's different levels of questions, and you could just use them to break the ice and begin making some of those connections. These are also just good ways to be able to use them in other parts of your building as well. And so you could use those We and Me connection cards. Well, it looks like people are requesting access there.
Yes, I'm going to look at it because on my side, it looks like they have access. So let me make
We'll
sure.
let Jill, she'll take a look at that. I'll just keep chatting through this, and then once she drops it, we'll see if we can get that to work. Our apologies on that.
Yes, Google is having issues this morning. It could be a Google thing.
That's true. Let me keep going. So the second thing that we would recommend in terms of just relationship bonding has to do with an interest survey. When we create an interest survey, it's something that you can use with your faculty and your teachers on where are they at? What would they like more of? What are some things that they're focused on that you could help co-create some pieces with them moving forward, and what that might look like in your buildings? So the third thing we have, and this is self-explanatory, is those one-on-ones. Just setting up times to meet individually with teachers to help them focus specifically on a goal that maybe they have for the year. Maybe it's something specific they have for a unit or a group of students. Maybe it's the time of year, but that one-on-one time where you're really able to give them the attention that they need is also just really important to building relationships. I'm thinking about that. And the last thing that we just wanted to offer today is something called empathy mapping. And when we think about empathy mapping, this is just a really powerful way to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. And so as coaches, when you think back to perhaps the time when you were teaching and you were in the classroom, there's a variety of different people you're working with. So maybe it's that brand new teacher and he's just graduated. This is his first year. He's excited and eager, but he is very open and interested in any help you can offer. And he wants you to come during planning times and conversations and wants you to come and watch and help and support. And it's just such a fun relationship. So you want to empathize with that newness and be able to step in that space. But we also know there's veteran and seasoned teachers in your building who maybe began their profession before coaching was even part of the rhythm of your district. And maybe as coaching has become something that's more familiar, they feel a little less interested, or maybe there's some hesitancy there. And so being empathetic to maybe their perceptions of what coaching is, and then finding ways to build those relationships to come in. And again, just underscore, we're just here to do things with you and not to you. And so I think this idea of building relationship becomes one of the key things when we start to think about ways we can support our teams and our teachers in this season.
So seeing some things in the chat it looks like most people are now able to get into the note catcher, and we're double checking the permissions on the cards and making sure that you can see those as well, because I think that was what people were having. So thank you. As we had the technical difficulty, try to refresh. Like you got the app empathy map. That's awesome. Okay. Cards are working now, great. And it looks like everything's working. Maybe Google's working on our side. Excellent.
Right.
Try to refresh for the cards because I just triple did it to make sure. And it looks like some people are getting them. Thank you so much for your patience.
Yeah, thank you. And those are all great resources. And so hopefully that will open up and you'll have a chance to keep going. Good. Well, while people are just getting those things opened and having a chance to begin maybe recording some things, let me go ahead and talk about our next technique. And this has to do with bringing joy to work. And so your mindset here is to offer optimism. And if you're trying to channel what Ted would say, I want you to think about this idea that joy is in the journey. And we know that bringing joy to work is really important. This idea of co-creating something powerful and meaningful is really something that connects us. And it's oftentimes people don't remember exactly what they learned or where they were when they learned it, but they might remember how they felt. And so when we can create places where there's optimism, where there's happiness, where there's joy, it just makes it a place that people want to be. And where they want to be, things happen, and things that maybe we didn't even expect to happen multiply, and that becomes something that's really important as well. And so when we think about the idea of bringing joy to work and the place that we get to do that, the great thing about schools is the strategy is the monthly journey of joy. And we know that so much in education is just built on the rhythm and cadence of things that are built around a calendar, or when grades are due, or the next benchmark, or I'm going to guess some of you out there are counting down the days till your next break, which may or may not be on Monday, or maybe there's something that's happening later on. And so we sometimes build these places anyway that has to do with what's happening next. And I think teachers are often built that way. So when we think a little bit about what this might look like, what would your school need to build a positive culture and some happiness? So we've just offered some pretty easy things here, and some are smaller, some are larger. And the first one is one thing I appreciate about you activity. And this is where people would just take an 8x11 piece of paper, they just write their name on the top, and it would say, Barb, one thing I appreciate about you, ... And then you just leave it by the mailboxes or the faculty lounge, and people can just come and they just write down something they appreciate. They might put their initials next to it, but you end up with something you can hang next to your desk or someplace just to remind you that that you're appreciated. And so that's one thing as coaches we can do. We can create some of those places. Maybe you want something a little bit bigger, like maybe creating a community service opportunity that's unique to your school. Or I know I've seen in some districts maybe respond to a natural disaster that's happened with a partner school. I know that in my community, there's multiple people in the counties that are that come together once a year for something called Feed My Starving Children. They pack boxes, they do some different pieces that are there. And so maybe there's something like that you could use and offer as well. Let's see, another opportunity might be to organize a secret staff week. And in this situation, you would just get the name of a staff member. Maybe you drop them over the course of the week a note that is encouraging, buy them some new supply of some sort, something small or quirky. And then as a coach, you could create that space, maybe at a coffee chat where people come together and reveal, and this builds some of those opportunities for connection. And it also gives some people opportunity to be able to think about some ways they can encourage each other as well, to think about that. And then the last thing we have here today has to do with this planning some walk and talks. And this is a place that you might utilize before school, after school. People walk during lunch, maybe during their planning periods, trying to take advantage of just to get up and move. And maybe as coaches, we create some questions, some things that maybe are focused on school initiatives, school ideas, and maybe some that are focused just on things that have to do with self and personal development. And others might just be something just silly that just creates, again, those connections as well. And so when we think about joy, bringing joy to work, these are some ways that we might be able to do that. So let me just give you a second and see if there's anything there that you want to add to your notes, and then we'll go on to our next strategy.
And I'm seeing in the chat, a lot of people are loving these ideas, Barb. Thanks so much for sharing them. Just want to remind people, make sure you go on everyone so people can see it. We're seeing all the love, so thank you. But I know you might also want to share some of the ideas you're sharing, as well as I've been seeing some ways you've been building relationships coming through, and other ideas. So thank you all. We're only better together.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. Good. Well, let me talk about then our next strategy. This has to do with being curious and creating some continual learning. And your mindset here is to cultivate curiosity. And this is a place where we want to be able to just recognize that we don't have all the answers, but we know at the heart of educators is a desire to learn. So as coaches, how do we create curiosity that move people forward, that ask people to have the questions, the stances that might, like Ted would say, foster practices that co-create responsive opportunities? What is it you want to learn? What is it that you're thinking about? What if this happens? So by doing that kind of a curiosity mindset, you're going to expand opportunities and things that might happen with learning in your building as we go ahead. Let me talk about this a little more before I jump to a strategy, and talk a little bit about what it looks like to actually have a culture of learning in a building. So if you just want to click to that next one, great, thank you so much. And again, when we talk about having developing a culture of learning, this is maybe your whole organization becomes a learning organization, and what that might look like. We know school is a place of learning. We know this is the place we want students to learn. And of course that's true, but the same thing is true for the adults in the building. So there's three things here to think about when we're talking about cultivating curiosity. One of them is maybe just using the physical environment to build the learning environments. So as coaches, we have the opportunity to actually create space, to find ways to get teachers and people out of their regular patterns where they walk, maybe moving them out of their departments and their offices and the silos that they naturally teach in because of the way the day is structured, and just creating some physical spaces for them to learn and bringing them together and other things. When that happens, this adds to my second bullet point, and this has to do with these optimal zones of learning. And what that actually means is there's a place for adult learners where there's something they don't know yet and they want to know it. So what's that sweet spot, that nexus where those two things come together and they just are curious about, well, how can I do this? And sometimes, but when we have this learning culture, it just creates a place for them to, takes me to my next point, where they become the agents of what they want to learn. They're the ones they get to direct what they want to learn. They have the stance of like, I'm the learner and I am the one who is the agent of learning, and I'm not the subject of it. So it goes back to the thing of something's not being done to me, but it's being done with me. And so when we create this culture of learning, it just expands all across the school. And it leads us to the strategy that I want to talk about here. And this is called Put Me in Coach. One of them's collaborative, the Pineapple Playbook, and the other one's an independent, the Passion Project. And you may have heard of both of these. They might not be brand new, but when we put it in this context, it becomes a really powerful thing. So the Pineapple Playbook is a place where you as a coach might create a chart or something, again, in a common space, getting people out of their environments and into new spaces, that lets teachers share practices or see practices. And the pineapple is a universal symbol of welcome. And so this is a place where maybe teachers can say, I'm doing this really great thing. Who wants to come and see me? And as a learner, I get to go and see. Or the other part that might happen is, as a learner, I want to see something and I haven't been able to master it or know it yet, but I know Jill's doing it. And so then I get to go see what she's doing. And so as a coach, we get to kind of coordinate and cultivate these spaces where our teachers get to learn and showcase from each other. And that's really powerful because that really grows and builds. And then our students see that happening as well. And so this is a great collaborative place to build culture. And it lowers the risk of feeling like we have to hold all of the learning, and it just shares the wealth of that. The second thing I want to talk about is this passion project. And I'm sure we've heard about this with students, but this is a great thing to do with adult learners as well. And we know that there's these places that people want to learn things. And sometimes as teachers, they just don't have a chance to. But what if we, as the coaches in the building, created that place? And so by giving teachers a space to think about what it is they are passionate about, what they have energy around, and they want to give some time to it, we can maybe capture some of those established times during the month and actually do it. So maybe we could hold the space in once a month during a PLC time or in a team time, or maybe during a faculty meeting. Teachers know that they have time for their passion project and they come together, they get to think about it. Maybe they're talking with somebody else, but this also gives the coaches a great place to go then and make those connections with their teachers, to come into their rooms, to talk to them, to ask how they're doing. How is what you're learning affecting what you're doing in the classroom with your students? And we keep building all those other things. We're building connections, we're building joy, and we're giving people a chance to learn in this learning culture. And so those are our first three techniques that we wanted to talk a little bit about today. And I think that I'm seeing some of the different responses in the chat as well. So thanks for managing all that. Let me just pop it back over to Jill and see what we have to talk a little bit about next.
Yeah, we are figuring out why the chat is disabled. And we did not disable it. So we're gonna work on that. We have someone working on that as we keep talking. So thank you for letting us know. We don't know what happened. But I also want to say to Barb, I love all these strategies that you shared with us. I know when I was an instructional coach, having the time to do the Genius Hour, the passion project, and be able to think about, okay, what do I want to focus in or try something new in my classroom, and getting that time and then working with other people that were also very excited about that was something that was really exciting for me.
Mhm. I agree. And when people actually do that, then it prevents that, like saying, I never get to do something, to I actually get to do something, and all of that grows as well. So
Absolutely. So our next one that we're focusing in on is small habits lead to big change. When coaches work with teachers to improve their practice, they must focus and be intentional and bite-sized to make those shifts. We know these are small habits because we know small habits leads to big change, and coaches need to hone their skills so that they can really identify the right leverage actions for classroom change and understand how to support teachers to make those adjustments. The mindset is really this constant, like, hey, we're a work in progress. We know we need to challenge ourselves to help us grow in that effort and attitude. And Ted would say intentional bite-sized shifts make the difference. It goes a long way. And so one of the ways that you can really think about this is that, again, that chain reaction of small habits make those tiny ripple effects to make a big ripple effect. And so you might be working with one teacher on one thing, but then that teacher might bring it to that PLC to then start talking about it and then make that big ripple effect. And all it needs to do is focus in on that one thing. So one of my favorite ways of doing that when working with instructional coaches is the strategy is called move the box. And so when you're doing this, you're really thinking about how can we move to be more student centered. And so if you look at the bottom left, that's more teacher controlled, very uniformed, versus the top right is more students have control. It's very unique to them. And so we want to make these 1% shifts so that we are gradually moving things more towards the right over time. We know people are not going to be able to make these shifts that they've been practicing in, all of them over to that top right box. And so taking that small thing of like, what's one thing? And so an example could be that, maybe you're starting off with goal setting. Maybe your goal setting is in that bottom left corner and you want to help a teacher move it to, that top corner. And so having them think about all the practices that they do and then have them start saying, all right, this is the one I'm going to focus on to move the box. And so for here, they could then slowly start moving that box to be that type right. So it might be, we want to move goal setting from the teacher driven to student led. So we're starting off with maybe one subject where the students are setting their own goals. Or maybe we might start with a mini lesson on how to goal set because we want to give students the proper tools to be able to make those small shifts. And so it might move over a little bit to, the teacher's still doing it, but the students have a little bit more control before they move up to that top right box. And so making those small shifts really, really help. And then over time, they're seeing that it's going over further and further to then not feel so overwhelmed, like, oh, I have to change all my practices. No, let's just focus in one at a time. And let's focus on all the things, because sometimes too, when they do this move the box activity, they realize how many things they are doing in their practice that do fit in that top right box. And so they might have like morning meeting that can be very student driven and unique. And so I might already have some practices that are already there. Oops. So the next one is measure what matters. And so this is what matters most. This is really about being solution oriented and really thinking about the data tells a story. And for coaching, to lead to sustainable and impact change, we must measure the effects of coaching has on student instruction and teacher experience. And coaches need to also consider how to measure their impact and identify a plan for collecting that data and considering how they might use that data to improve their practice. Just like we're asking teachers to collect the data from students and use that data to then change our instruction or their instruction. And so we want to do the same best practices when we're working with teachers. So we're making sure we're meeting their needs. And so one way to just start collecting data to see how you as an instructional coach could maybe change the way you're working with coaches is through a retrospective. One of my favorite retrospectives that I've done with my team And also when I was an instructional coach with the teams that I worked with, is going in and just saying, all right, what's a start, stop, tweak, continue? What should we start doing? What's something that you're missing that you want me to do more of? So something they might say is, oh, I would love you to come in to maybe like model a lesson for me, or maybe can you co-teach something with me so that I can see what you're doing. Might be something they want to add. Stop. What could we stop doing? There's always things, that we could take off the plate. Maybe there's something that they want to share that they take off. Maybe it's a tweak. What should we tweak to improve? And so one of the things I know when I was an instructional coach, one of the things that my teachers wanted me to tweak is that I was sharing a lot of resources with them during PLC times. One of the things they asked me to tweak is like, can you continue to share those resources in PLC times and really help us? But then can you also like follow it up in an email so we have all the links in one place? And so we started doing that. And then from that tweak, it was like, hey, can we make like a bank of all the things that you're sharing with us? And so like the next tweak, when I did this again, they're like, hey, let's have this Google site that's a bank of all these great resources. And if I wouldn't have done any of that if I hadn't asked them and been able to seek that data. And then continue. What should we continue to do is also really important so that okay, they are liking, when I go to PLC meetings, okay, they are liking, how we're taking and we're making these independent growth plans together. So those are things that you're going to continue to do as well. I also love seeing that the chat is back up and running. So please feel free to drop any ideas or questions in the chat as well with all our technical difficulties that we've been having today. So the next one, and last but not least, is also the one that we need to think about, which is share and scale. Again, I've said it multiple times on here, we're better together. And what Ted would say is ideas are bigger than your team. And so when we're thinking about really the skills of great teachers can be used across multiple levels. And coaches need to reflect on lessons learned and share best practices with fellow coaches, teachers, leaders of all the different levels. Just because something's working great in kindergarten doesn't mean it's not going to work great in 5th grade. You might have to make a little tweaks, but we need to be able to share vertically across grade levels as well. Same thing goes when you're in the secondary. Something might be working great in a math classroom. It also could work great in a science or literacy classroom as well. So really thinking about how can we share those best practices that we're seeing and making sure that teachers are feeling, are sharing their story as well. And so one way to do that is through lunch and learns. And this was one of my favorite things I did as an instructional coach, where we invite teachers to lunch and learns, and we would highlight teachers' work and invite them to share, because oftentimes they didn't know, necessarily what they did really well. So I might say, Mrs. White, you've been doing such a great job with your students around goal setting. I would love to share how you set up their student goal setting sheets and how you incorporate it into your classroom. Another thing might be, you might see another teacher is doing a great job of mini lessons. They're truly staying to that 10 to 15 minute mini lesson and, really getting there. So they might share how they've done that. Also creating a note catcher like we've created today, so they could share and also reflect on what they hear from others, which is also really great. Even better, some ideas that worked well is, asking the local community restaurant to donate lunch, or maybe your PTA can donate lunch to make it truly, great. If you're on a budget like I was, everybody bringing their lunch, they were just happy to be eating together and having someone else bring their kids to specials and pick them up so that they were just truly focused in on the lunch and learn. Host them once a quarter so it becomes one of your school's district's best practices. So teachers know and they're already thinking about, ooh, the next lunch and learn, I want to share X. Or at the next lunch and learn, I want to take Miss White's idea and I want to try it in my classroom and then share how I maybe did it being a 5th grade teacher versus a kindergarten teacher, because that relationship piece is so huge. And then also making desserts, showing you care, build that relationship. Or one of the things, and Barb and I recently did this, is like learn their favorite treat and then, surprise them with a treat when they come in the room so that it's each personalized to each of them. which is also fun. Maybe they want, a Hershey bar or Reese's peanut butter cups or pretzels, whatever it is. And then you can get that little treat for them. So have a little surprise as they show up and they see that you care, because again, those relationships are huge. We need to build the capacity of leaders. And the only way to do that is together, to feel that success, that we're all moving in the right direction. And it's not a me and my classroom, it's a we. And it's same thing with instructional coaches. This is a we. I'm, part of your classroom as well. So want to pause there just to see if anybody has any questions before we go into our practice. I was kind of scanning as people were saying how much they love lunch and learns, and yes, agreeing that relationships were huge as well. So awesome.
I think if people resonate with that, Jill, it made me think about too, when you have those lunch and learns, it does the other part of that. When people come, they often come ready to say something positive about one of their colleagues that maybe just haven't had a chance to, but they know they can shout it out to them as well. And so it keeps building that relationship piece, which we're hearing and seeing again here in the chat. So many great ideas there, especially if it just breaks the rhythm too of where people normally eat. So that changes that space. It changes all those other things that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. All right. So we'll go into practice, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Barb.
Right. So what we're going to do is we are going to move into that part of practice, and we're going to just ask you to take just a few minutes on your own to maybe think about a commitment that you would like to make as you've had a chance to listen to some of these different things. So you can use your notes, go back over and take a look at these 6 different techniques that we shared, some of the different strategies, and then just make a commitment to yourself based on the journey that you're on, based on what you need. This is time for you. So we're going to take about 3 minutes. We'll play just a song. You'll have a chance to go back and capture some of these things in the moment while you're thinking about it. And then we'll come back together here just shortly.
Make a commitment that you can complete that 1% action. We'll play about a 3-minute song to have that reflection. So we know planning is never long enough, and but you have your own copy, so you can go back to this. But would love to hear from you in the chat. For the supply plan, is like, we know you haven't done it yet, but what do you plan to do? What is that commitment that you said you're going to do? And we'd love for you to drop it in the chat. So share, what are you committing to try in the chat? Did you focus in on one area? Are you going to try the pineapple chart or the passion project or maybe the lunch and learn? Would love for you to just take a few minutes and jot what your commitment, or copy and paste it and drop it in the chat from your notes document to see. And we're already seeing people starting to populate in the chat. We're seeing some lunch and learns, passion projects. Yeah, reframing work time. Yeah, loving seeing a lot more lunch and learns, right? It's a quick, easy thing you could do tomorrow, really. It's little to no prep on any of these things. That's what I love about these so much, Barb. Yeah, a note catcher is so much better than agenda sometimes, to be able to have that in collaboration time together. Love seeing these. Yep, retrospective, stop, tweak, gathering that data, connections with small habits to lead to big change. You all are having fabulous commitments that you are going to do, which is awesome. Yeah, and you got to experience the note catcher too. So then you can use the note catcher in any of your PDs that you do as an instructional coach, and or when you do your lunch and learns. Glad the connection cards and empathy maps are working for you now. Yes, and the use of a note catcher. Loving it. You're going to use it Monday in a meeting. We'll love it.
Even better.
Barbara, I know where you are, so I'm going to check back in on you about that note catcher.
Yeah. I think the note catcher is so great because it is another one of those things that people can take ownership, and it's doing something with them, and not like, here's something you have to do, which again underscores that relationship piece again.
Great. Well, keep those coming in if you haven't shared your commitment yet. Yeah, that virtual life to live really makes these connections harder, but might be a good way. And so love that. Mm-hmm. Again, for our debrief right now, we really want you to find time to think about these commitments and add it to your calendar. Reflect right now. When are you going to commit to that? We want you to tweet to us when it happens. So, Barb said she was doing the note catcher on Monday. We want to know how it goes. Let us know. Tweet to us, email us. We're here for you because you might have to make some small tweaks. I love Carrie Ann. Instead of a lunch and learn, she's doing a breakfast and learn. Good spin on it. So it's fast. Love that. Totally stealing that idea. Thank you so much for sharing as well. So find that time, make that commitment, put it on your calendar now, because as soon as you leave this meeting, 85 other things are going to happen and come at you. So take that time to put it on your calendar now. Anything else you want to add, Barb, on that reflection?
No, I don't think so. I think we're just seeing so many good things here that it's just encouraging. And I think that the idea of being able to do it right now and then come back to it is just a good reminder that we're modeling and learning as well. And those are things, again, we can share in conversations as we're working with our teachers too.
100%. All right. So with that being said, we want to make sure that you subscribe to our blog for these weekly tips and resources. So everything like we're sharing today, a lot of times we put them in our blogs so that you have these ideas. If you're not subscribed already, please do so, because then you can get these free tips and tricks and little ideas that you can try. And Barb just dropped that into the chat. And then last but not least, we thank you so much for joining us. And we are going to drop the slides that we know you want in the chat. And I already checked the link like 16 times. That is opened. You will have viewing access. Hopefully Google's on our side. But you can use this. So if you want to share some of these ideas or use this as a PD when you're working with other instructional coaches, it's in there. Everything's linked. So you have these resources as well, and use the note catcher too. If you have any questions, drop them into the chat. We're going to be on here for a few more minutes, but we also wanted to give you a few minutes before meetings to also, run to the restroom and do all the things. But we thank you so much for joining us, and make sure you follow us on Twitter, and we'll keep sharing more ideas. Like I already am going to steal the breakfast one.
Thanks so much. And thanks for your patience too.
Oh, thank you. I'm obsessed with my wallpaper too. That was it was definitely a quarantine. I'm going to be stuck in this room. I need to do something. So thank you, Melanie. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm so glad this was time well spent. We appreciate it. We enjoyed putting it together for you all. And if you're interested for getting, this virtual course for instructional coaching, let us know, because we know that time is tough, and those virtual courses we do have for you. I know that came through a couple times. Ooh, Puerto Rico. Yeah, we're really Ukraine, Puerto Rico, Ghana,
Lithuania. I know, like world, which even that is those fun connections we can still make. Glad to see that.
I don't even know what time it would be in Ukraine or Ghana. Is it early, late? I don't even know what day. It would be fun.
Ghana, I think, is late. Later. I think Ghana's ahead of us. I got to go to Ghana once. It was awesome.
Oh, awesome. All right. So some people said I joined late. How do we get the recording? The recording will be emailed to you along with the resources as well. So thank you so much for joining. It was amazing to have over 100 people here today to learn and grow together, and got some great ideas.